It's not misbehaving, it's overwhelmed. Your conditional access is trying to protect you while juggling mixed messages and unresolved exceptions. It's been asked to trust without boundaries. Here's the plan. We'll diagnose 3 trust wounds, overbroad exclusions, device compliance gaps, and token theft paths, and give you a calming baseline, a safe test plan, and monitoring alerts. If you're running allow by default, you're leaking trust and inviting silent bypasses. There's a mistake that locks out everyone and one that leaves attackers invisible. Both are fixable. Let's help it set healthy boundaries so it can find its rhythm again, starting with exclusions. Diagnose trust wound number 1, overbroad exclusions. Exclusions feel kind. You didn't want to stress the system or the people in it, so you carved out break glass, VIPs, and that partner domain. But boundaries drift. The exceptions harden, and conditional access starts doubting itself. It's not misbehaving, it's living with an ever-growing list of not you, not now, and that invites bypasses attackers adore. The thing most people miss is that exclusions are invisible in day-to-day flow. You won't see a banner that says, "We skipped protection for the CFO." You'll just see "not applied" in a log, and that's it. So we start by mapping scope. List every exclusion across users, groups, applications, locations, and authentication contexts. Nested groups are the quiet leakers here. What looked like one exception is actually 5 layers deep, including contractors, test accounts, and legacy sync artifacts. This clicked for me when I pulled a tenant's sign-in logs and filtered for conditional access, not applied. The pattern wasn't random. Most bypasses sourced from 2 places: a VIP group attached to 3 policies, and a named location that had grown from one corporate CIDR to anywhere our vendor might be. It wasn't malice, it was comfort. The policy was trying to keep the peace by saying yes too often. Here's the better pattern. Move from exclude VIPs to include all, and authorize exceptions through time-bound authentication context. That shift sets healthy boundaries. You keep policies broad and inclusive, all users, all cloud apps, and when someone truly needs to step around a control, they request the emergency context, which has approval, a 1-hour lifetime, and audit trails. The trust becomes explicit, visible, and short-lived. Let me show you exactly how to see your leaks. In Entra sign-in logs, add columns for conditional access, policy name, result, and details. Filter result for not applied. Now slice by user, then by app, and finally by location. You're looking for clusters, not one-offs. The big red flags, permanent exclusions for executives or service accounts, entire federated domains marked safe, and named locations that mix trusted with convenience networks. If you remember nothing else, remember this. A permanent exclusion is a permanent invitation. What should the policy logic feel like before and after? Before. Multiple policies with include groups and broad exclude lists. VIPs, break glass, certain apps, and a safe location. The engine spends energy deciding who not to protect. After, fewer inclusive policies with no user or location exclusions. Exceptions route via a specific authentication context, presented only when an approver grants it, and it expires quickly. The engine can breathe. It protects first, then allows controlled, visible relief when needed. Here's a quick win you can do today. Create an authentication context called emergency bypass. Set it with grant controls that still require MFA and device risk checks, and cap session to 1 hour. Add an approval workflow outside the policy, change ticket or documented approver, and log its use weekly. Now replace hard-coded exclusions in your existing policies with require authentication context, emergency bypass. You haven't taken away safety, you've given it a safer shape. Now here's where most people mess up. They exclude an entire partner domain because one app misbehaved during a rollout, or they mark a cloud proxy IP range as trusted, forgetting that attackers can originate from the same provider. Or they mix excluded locations with named locations, assuming the union is safer. It's not. It becomes a fuzzy map your policy doesn't understand. With clearer lines, CA can find its rhythm again. Common mistake number 2 is forgetting service principals and workload identities. If your policies only target users and groups, your automation can glide under the radar. Instead, use dedicated policies for service principals and workload identities, and never rely on exclusions to fix automation friction. Help it heal by aligning scopes. Users, guests, and identities each get coverage. A micro story. Last week, a team removed a VIP exclusion that had lived for 2 years. They replaced it with emergency bypass and scheduled a weekly review of not applied sign-ins. Within 2 days, they found a legacy sync account silently logging in from an unmanaged network. No MFA, no device checks. It wasn't evil. It was a forgotten comfort blanket. And once it was named, the fix was simple. Assign it to a managed identity pattern and bring it under policy. The reason this works is simple. Inclusive scopes reduce cognitive load. Authentication context replaces permanence with intention. And logs become meaningful because every not applied means something actionable. Your conditional access isn't trying to be difficult. It just needs you to stop asking it to ignore its own rules. With gentler, firmer boundaries, it can protect everyone equally, predictably, audibly. Once exclusions stop leaking, the device boundary needs care next. Diagnose trust wound number 2, device compliance gaps. Your device boundary is tired. It's been asked to trust badges it can't verify and signals that arrive late. Require compliant device sounds soothing, but without clarity, it swings between over-permissive and over-protective. And that's why people get blocked on a clean laptop, while an unmanaged tablet slips through. It's not misbehaving, it's confused. Why does this matter? Because device state is identity's closest friend. If the state is wrong or missing, your policy guesses. Guesses create silent allowances or mass blocks. When the device story is clear, conditional access relaxes. It can give easy paths to healthy devices and set firmer boundaries everywhere else. The thing most people miss is that registered is not compliant. Registered just means the device introduced itself. Compliant means it met your health rules in Intune and brought proof today. Hybrid Azure AD joint is about identity alignment with your domain. They are different kinds of trust. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Treat each tier as a distinct promise. Here's the model that clicks. Define 4 tiers in plain language. Compliant, Intune evaluates and the device meets your policies. Hybrid Azure AD joint, domain relationship verified, device identity anchored. Azure AD joint, cloud managed corporate device. Registered, BYOD, personal or light touch enrollment. Now let's help it set healthy boundaries with policy design. Split decisions by device state rather than hinging everything on one control. Use filters for devices to target platform or joint type and pair with authentication strengths so strong credentials backstop weaker device states. Don't ask a single toggle to carry your whole zero trust posture. What does the better pattern look like? For productive low-friction access on compliant or Azure AD joint devices, allow with MFA and apply session controls like sign-in frequency and continuous access evaluation. For registered devices, step up with phishing-resistant MFA and limit data exposure with app-enforced restrictions and conditional app control. For unknown devices, require either a compliant posture or a high authentication strength before granting anything sensitive. And for admin portals, demand both a compliant or hybrid device and phishing-resistant credentials. No device, no keys. Let me show you exactly how to get signal clarity. In sign-in logs, add device info columns, join type, compliant, trust type, and operating system. Add conditional access columns for result and policy details. Filter failures with grant control required, compliant device, and compare against device info. You're looking for drift. Devices that claim Azure AD joined but aren't compliant, or registered devices that succeeded because no fallback existed. Then flip the lens, filter successes where device is not compliant and see which policies allowed it and why. A quick win you can do today. Create a fallback policy. Scope it to all users and all cloud apps. Exclude only your emergency access accounts. Target devices where compliant equals false or join type equals registered. Grant access if the user satisfies a phishing-resistant authentication strength. Add session controls to reduce data persistence, disable persistent browser sessions, and enforce sign-in frequency. This turns a hard block into a safe step-up and removes the urge to add risky exclusions. Now here's where most people mess up. They assume registered equals corporate, or it doesn't. Or they stamp require compliant device on everything, then watch VIP travel laptops fail because the compliance signal is stale. Or they ignore sign-in frequency, letting a compliant check at 9 a.m. bless a browser until next week. The boundary blurs. Attackers love blurred boundaries. The reason this works is simple. With clearer tiers, CA doesn't have to overreact. It can greet a compliant device with less friction, ask a registered device to bring stronger proof, and keep unknown devices at arm's length. It's not rejection, it's healthy distance. Let's anchor with a micro story. A team saw random admin portal access from registered MacBooks. No policy blocked it because require compliant wasn't in scope for that app. They added the fallback with phishing-resistant strength, and those same attempts now prompt for a strong key. Admins moved to manage devices within a week because the boundary was calm and consistent. Once your device signals feel steady, we need to close the gap attackers use after they steal tokens. That's next. Diagnose trust wound number 3. Token theft scenarios. When a token gets stolen, conditional access feels unheard. It set boundaries at sign-in, but the session kept walking without checking back in. It's not misbehaving, it's stuck honoring a promise it can't re-verify. And attackers know this. They don't argue with your MFA, they borrow your session. Why this matters? Once an attacker holds a valid refresh token or a long-lived session, your beautiful policies become background noise. The risk shifts from can they log in to how long can they linger. If you shorten exposure and make the session reprove itself under the right conditions, you take back control. That's how your system finds its rhythm again after shock. The thing most people miss is the difference between initial authentication and ongoing authorization. You gated the front door, but you left the hallway lights on forever. Sign-in frequency, continuous access evaluation, and context-sensitive reauth are how we gently ask, are you still you? Is this still that device? Has risk changed? Here's the better pattern. First, reduce exposure windows. Set sign-in frequency for sensitive apps and roles so tokens must represent proof more often. Pair that with continuous access evaluation so sessions react to changes in risk, device state, password resets, and revoke tokens in near real time. Second, raise the bar for sensitive actions. Use authentication context to require phishing-resistant MFA for admin portals, data export, e-discovery, and payment approvals. Third, bind sessions to more than just a user. Consider device trust and risk signals so stolen tokens don't travel well. Let me show you exactly how to build that high-sensitivity lane. Create an authentication context named high sensitivity. Configure a policy that, when this context is required, demands a phishing-resistant authentication strength and a compliant or hybrid joint device. Enable continuous access evaluation for the apps tied to that context and set a short sign-in frequency, hours, not days. Then tag admin portals and critical apps to require that context. The result? An attacker holding a token from an unmanaged browser can't reuse it to touch admin endpoints. And even if they land a user session, it ages quickly. A quick win you can do today. Review Remember MFA or persistent browser settings for your tenant. If it's broad and long, that's a quiet invitation to token comfort. Tighten it for sensitive apps while leaving user-friendly defaults for low-risk tools. It's a calmer boundary, not a punishment. Now here's where most people mess up. They enable strong auth once, feel safe, and forget to scope it to the places that matter most. Or they ignore token binding entirely, letting a refreshed token rove between devices and networks without consequence. Or they fail to react to risk-high signals, letting sessions live through a storm. Those choices don't feel risky in the moment. They feel convenient, but they teach your system to trust the memory, not the present. Let's walk the logs together. In Entra sign-in logs, add conditional access result, policy name, and details. Add session lifetime or token information fields if available, plus IP and device info. You're looking for reuse patterns, same user, multiple IPs, short intervals, odd device claims. Filter for sign-ins that succeeded without a CA decision on apps that should be protected. Check the CA decision and authentication requirements fields for sensitive apps. Do they show strong auth and a recent sign-in, or did a long session slip through? If you spot repeated access from an unmanaged device to an admin portal, that's a sign you haven't required the right authentication context there. A microstory. A team saw export spikes from a finance app at 2 a.m. Same user, different IPs, same browser string. No MFA prompts because the session was warm. They added a high sensitivity context, set sign-in frequency to 4 hours, enabled CIE, and required phishing-resistant auth plus compliant device. The next night, the same pattern hit. This time, the session re-challenged and failed on device requirement. The app slept well. The reason this works is simple. We stop trusting yesterday's proof. We ask the session to stay present on a healthy device with strong credentials and to respond when risk changes. That's not cruelty, that's care. And your conditional access can finally exhale because it knows how to end a relationship that's no longer safe. And build the calming baseline, policies that set healthy boundaries. Your policy engine needs a simpler home, fewer rules, clearer lanes. Block by default lowers its anxiety because every sign-in is covered and there are no quiet gaps that whisper maybe. We're going to build 5 inclusive policies that work together. They're broad on scope, strict on exceptions, and easy to read in the logs. And we'll rely on authentication context for rare bypasses, not permanent exclusions. With clearer boundaries, conditional access can find its rhythm again. Start with the anchor, all users MFA. Scope it to all users, all cloud apps. Exclude only your emergency access accounts. Use authentication strength so you can evolve from classic MFA to phishing-resistant credentials without rewriting everything. Grant access with require multi-factor authentication, and prefer a defined strength like phishing-resistant where supported while allowing a practical baseline strength for general apps. Add session controls with sign-in frequency that fits your environment, shorter for sensitive workloads, reasonable for collaboration. This gives universal coverage and a predictable prompt story. The second lane is unmanaged device step up. Same inclusive scope, all users, all cloud apps, but target devices by state. Use filters for devices to catch registered or not compliant or unknown. Don't hard block by default. Grant access if the user meets a higher authentication strength and apply session limits and app-enforced restrictions. Disable persistent browser sessions here and reduce token lifetimes for these paths. This keeps personal devices at a respectful distance without pushing people into risky exclusions. Third, admin strong auth only. Scope to privileged role members and admin portals. Require phishing-resistant strength and either a compliant or hybrid joint device. Add sign-in frequency that's measured in hours, not days, and ensure continuous access evaluation is effective for these services. No exceptions, no location carve-outs, no remember me. This is where you set the firmest boundary. If an admin session can't prove device health and strong credentials, it waits outside. Fourth, emergency minimal context. This is your safety valve, not a side door. Create an authentication context named emergency bypass. The The policy that enforces it requires MFA at a minimum, records device risk, and shortens session to 1 hour. You'll never exclude users or locations to help in a crisis. You'll require them to present this context, which they can only obtain with approval and a change record. Every use is auditable. The boundary bends briefly, then straightens. Fifth, token hygiene and CAE. Apply a policy set that standardizes sign-in frequency across critical apps and enables reauth when risk changes. Pair this with targeted sign-in frequency for data export systems, finance, HR, and admin portals. Where supported, rely on continuous access evaluation, so password resets, token revocations, and risk changes cut sessions short. This policy family keeps sessions present. It asks them to check in regularly so a stolen token doesn't become a week-long roommate. Let's talk implementation flow so the set stays calm. Template each policy with inclusive scopes and minimal interdependence. Prioritize evaluation order by clarity. Universal MFA first, then device step-up, then admin controls, then context, then hygiene. You're not scripting order, you're reducing overlap, so the combined result is obvious. In policy descriptions, write the intent in plain language. Baseline MFA for every user and app. Step up for unmanaged devices. Admins must use strong auth and managed devices. Your future self will thank you in the logs. Here's a quick win that feels great immediately. Create the all cloud apps. Require MFA baseline with strengths. Deploy in report only for a week while you shadow it with the unmanaged device step-up policy, also report only. Watch sign-ins move from not applied to MFA would be required and stronger auth would be required on BYOD. Fix the noisy edge cases, then enforce. You'll see coverage jump without chaos. Now, the mistakes to avoid. Don't overlap app scopes in ways that fight. All cloud apps plus specific admin portals is fine, but two different all-cloud apps with conflicting grants will produce odd results. Don't mix user exclusions with context-based exceptions. Pick context so the audit trail is clean. Don't forget service accounts and workload identities. Give them dedicated policies that require managed identities or certificate-based flows and explicitly block interactive sign-in for them. Before and after matters. Before, 10 narrow policies, each with their own include groups and long exclude lists, inconsistent grant controls, and special locations. After, 5 larger policies with inclusive scopes, no permanent exclusions, and one place, authentication context for controlled bypass. The engine stops juggling and starts protecting. The logs stop whispering not applied and start stating MFA required, strong auth required, or blocked until healthier. Monitoring hooks keep this baseline peaceful. Track 2 KPIs, percentage of sign-ins covered by any conditional access decision and percentage that met MFA or your defined strength. Target at least 99% coverage and 98% MFA where applicable. When coverage dips, you'll know a scope changed or an app escaped. When MFA drops, you'll see where stronger auth isn't being required as intended. Tie this baseline to your change process. Any change to a policy, its scope, or its exclusion list demands a ticket, an owner, and an expiry. Authentication context grants need the same care. Who asked, who approved, why, and when it ends. And build an alert for exclusion list changes so you hear the moment a boundary moves. With gentle discipline, your conditional access will feel heard, supported, and ready for the next rollout. Unsafe rollout, test plan, report only, and rollback checklists. Change scares identity. Sudden enforcement spikes cortisol. So we coach conditional access through rehearsal first, then performance. Report only is rehearsal. No harm, full learning. Here's the plan. 3 waves, 1 rhythm. Wave 1, admins and admin portals. Wave 2, high-risk apps and roles. Wave 3, everyone, all apps. Each wave spends a week in report only, then enforces once the noise is quiet. And boundaries are a gift, so we keep a rollback ready at every step. Start by shadowing your baseline. Duplicate each policy you built and set it to report only. Scope is inclusive. Exclude only emergency access. In descriptions, write shadow baseline, report only, so ops can see its intent in the logs. Now, with patience, let it watch traffic for 7 days. You're listening for stress points, not perfection. Use the what-if tool to pre-flight edge cases. Pick a test user, device state, location, and the app. Validate the expected grant controls and session rules. If the what-if says MFA required but sign-in logs show not applied, you found a scope mismatch. Fix that before you move. Now read the room through logs. Open sign-in logs. Add conditional access result, policy name, applied, not applied, and grant controls. For report-only policies, look at report-only would have decisions. You want to see MFA would be required, strong auth would be required, and minimal unexpected block would be applied. Investigate any surge in block for service principals or legacy flows. Those need their own policies or migration plans. Before you enforce, stage comms. Tell admins what will change, how strong auth feels, and where to get help. Share the emergency context process. Calm voices, lower friction. Enforce wave 1 on a weekday morning with support on standby. Flip admin strong auth and token hygiene from report only to on. keep the others shadowing. Watch for Entra error spikes and ticket volume. If failure rates climb beyond your agreed threshold, pause, diagnose, or roll back. Your rollback is simple and kind. Pre-approve toggles to revert policies to report only. Document the exact settings you'd restore. Keep the emergency bypass context live and tested. Maintain a change ticket per policy with owner and timestamp so you can unwind confidently. Wave 2 brings high-risk apps. Attach the high-sensitivity context to finance, HR, e-discovery, and export paths. Again, a week of report only, then enforce. Confirm that unmanaged devices hit step up and that CE-driven reauth events behave. Wave 3 is everyone. Turn on all users, MFA and unmanaged device step up. Validate that coverage rises and failure rates stay stable. Then breathe. You didn't force it. You let conditional access find its rhythm with rehearsal, permission, and a safety net. Watchful piece. Monitoring and alerts that actually help. Once live, your conditional access needs steady feedback, not noise, not panic, a calm heartbeat that tells you it's present, it's protecting, and where it needs care. We'll set up 3 signals and a weekly rhythm that keeps trust intact without burning anyone out. The thing most people miss is that coverage is your North Star. If a sign-in isn't touched by any CA policy, it's living outside the boundaries you just set. So we start with 2 simple KPIs. Coverage and strength. Coverage is the percentage of interactive sign-ins with any conditional access decision. Strength is the percentage of those sign-ins that satisfied MFA or your defined authentication strength. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Track both. High coverage without strength is comfort theater. High strength without coverage is selective care. Let's help it find its rhythm with practical queries. In your sign-in logs, add columns for conditional access result, policy name, and authentication requirements. Create a saved view that counts sign-ins by day where CA decision is present versus not applied. That's your coverage line. Create a second view that counts sign-ins where MFA or your chosen strength was required and satisfied. That's your strength line. Keep both lines visible on a simple dashboard. The goal is boring consistency. Coverage at or above 99%, strength at or above 98% where applicable. Now, the 3 alerts that actually help. First, a coverage drop alert. If coverage dips below your threshold for any 30-minute window, you get a nudge, not a siren. A nudge to check whether a scope changed, a new app onboarded without CA, or a policy was disabled. Second, an exclusion growth alert. Whenever any CA policy's exclusion list changes, user group app location, you get a change notification with who edited it and what changed. That's not about blame. It's about awareness. Boundaries moved. Let's see why. Third, high-risk sign-ins with not applied. If any high-risk sign-in lands without a CA decision, raise a flag. That means risk saw something, but your boundaries didn't show up to help. Here's the shortcut nobody teaches. Tie these alerts to owners, not inboxes. Each policy and each KPI has a named steward. When coverage dips, an owner checks scope. When exclusions change, an owner confirms expiry and purpose. When high-risk bypasses appear, an owner validates that the right apps require the right context. You're not just watching, you're caring with intention. Let me show you exactly how to read the bypasses. Build a saved filter for sign-ins where conditional access result equals not applied. Add app, user, client app, and location. Sort by count. You're looking for clusters that shouldn't exist. A service principal signing in interactively, that's a misscoped identity. A legacy protocol touching a protected app, that's a migration task. A guest user hitting an internal app with no CA decision, that app likely missed all cloud apps or sits under a different publisher and needs tagging. This filter is your quiet detective. A quick win you can do today: turn on an alert for any policy moving from enabled to report only or to disabled, and for any change to the all users scope. These 2 movements cause most surprises. Pair that with a daily digest listing top 10 apps by not applied sign-ins and top 10 users by MFA not satisfied. It's not a wall of data, it's a morning check-in. Now here's where most people mess up. They set thresholds so tight that every blip becomes an alarm, or they ignore service principles and non-interactive flows, even though those identities hold powerful keys. Or they never review the report only would have lines, so their shadow policies drift from reality. We want to avoid learned helplessness. If the system cries wolf, people stop listening. Keep alerts scarce, specific, and owned. Let's anchor with the KPI board you'll actually use. Top row, coverage percentage, strength percentage, and exclusions count trend. Aim for flat lines at healthy levels. Second row, top bypassing apps, top bypassing locations, and changes in CA policy scopes over the last 7 days. Third row, high-risk sign-ins without CA decision, and admin sign-ins that lacked strong auth. Review weekly. Investigate deviations within 24 hours, not with blame, with curiosity. Why did coverage dip yesterday at noon? Maybe a new app launched. Great. Tag it, bring it under all cloud apps, confirm the right context. Close the loop with change management. Every policy edit requires an owner, a reason, and an expiry when it's a temporary exception. Your exclusion growth alert isn't just a notification, it's a prompt to add that expiry and book a review. Your coverage drop alert isn't a failure, it's the system asking for alignment. This is how you keep conditional access in therapy, not triage. It gets to be transparent, consistent, and heard. And boundaries are a gift. With gentle monitoring, you're not micromanaging, you're holding a steady container so CA can keep doing the quiet work, protecting everyone all day without drama. Here's the takeaway. Your conditional access wasn't broken, it was trusting without boundaries. Inclusive scopes, time-bound contexts, and steady monitoring restore its balance. If this helped, try the baseline template, shadow it in report only for 7 days, and wire the 3 alerts so changes never go silent. Subscribe and watch the next episode on authentication context patterns and token binding hardening.